Next, after understanding functions, one more point you need to know is about in JavaScript, we have to know the object-oriented features. We need to understand the object-oriented features, the OOP features. So, object-oriented programming in JavaScript. The main concept of object-oriented programming actually is to achieve the concept of reusability and extensibility. So the main concept is reusability, extensibility, separation, code separation, security. All these comes under the concept of object-oriented. So there are several programming systems actually. Basics I will give you. In real-world development process, we have process-oriented programming system, process-oriented programming system. We have object-based programming system, object-based programming system, and object-oriented programming system. Object-oriented programming system. So we have this process-oriented, object-based, object-oriented programming systems. Actually, process-oriented programming system is nothing but one of the advantages about process-oriented programming system is it supports low-level features, and it can directly interact with hardware services. So it is faster and it uses less memory. Process-oriented programming system. Example, we have C, COBOL, Pascal, all these comes under process-oriented. They support low-level features. They can directly interact with hardware. They are faster, so they use very less memory. These are the main advantages actually. But problem is reusability. Reusability issues are there. Separation issues are there. Dynamic memory allocation, all these are the problems. So these are all issues actually. We don't have them. So reusability issues, separation, dynamic memory allocations, security issues, so many. So, but they are good for certain occasions. Object-based programming system, it supports reusability, it supports separation, it supports extensibility, but it will not have other features. So that is the reason. So we generally call them object-based programming. Means dynamic memory allocations also there. But security issues will be there. Dynamic polymorphism is not supported. All such problems are there. Example for this, so we have Visual Basic. We call VB, Visual Basic. We have JavaScript. Actually, JavaScript comes under object-based. Object-oriented programming means it supports all of them: reusability, separation, dynamic memory allocation, security, and all. But the problems also there. Object-oriented problem is heavy, so slow. They cannot directly interact with hardware. Hardware very complex. They needs more memory, so they need more memory. Memory. These are all problems with OOPS. That is the reason everywhere object-oriented programming is not great. So object-oriented programming we know. Actually, first object-oriented programming was similar. After that, we have like Smalltalk. After that, we have like C++, then Java, then .NET languages. All these object-oriented. So technically, object-oriented have several features, but these are all not supported in JavaScript. That is the reason JavaScript is not a OOP language. It supports only some features of OOPs. It's not a complete OOP language. What it supports, we will discuss today. What are the features supported by JavaScript? Because it is not supporting all the features, only few of them. So first important in object-oriented programming of JavaScript, you need to understand class. Class. So what is a class? How the classes are defined? Actually, class is called as a program template. Program template. So class comprises of properties, methods, accessors, and constructor. These are the members of a class. Class can contain properties, methods, and accessors and constructors. So we generally call class as a logical entity. Logical entity. Actually, the concept I will tell you in a simple point. For example, generally, how this concept came. So generally, we have simulation systems. Simulation systems. Simulation system means actually computers have lot of processors. Means a single computer contains lot of processors are present. Now everywhere we need some functionality. Everywhere we need some functionality. So then what happens is that functionality, so we have to define the functionality in this processor, and it will work only here. We have to import everywhere. We have to import that logic everywhere in order to use it. Now, this logic can be stored. This logic can be stored in a class. Class is an logical entity. Now, wherever you want to use it, you create an object for that particular class. Wherever you want, you create an object for that class. And you can access and use it from any location. This can be accessed and used from any location. So class generally is a logical, actually it is a template. What is meant by template? You can take this data here and you can customize here. You can put according to your requirements. Everywhere you don't use in the same way. Everywhere we can customize and we can write according to our requirements. Use it according to our requirements. That's the reason. So it is a template. People also call it as a blueprint. So blueprint. So because it contains some logic which is same used everywhere with different values. It is also called as a model. So model means it contains the logic that represents the data. If it contains the logic that represents the data, we call it as model. If it contains the logic that represents business requirements, we call entity. So if it represents business requirements, that means actually what happens is, so we generally have database. This data is designed. Suppose we are having some data. Actually, this data is designed according to business requirements. Business requirements. That means client requirements. For the business requirements, the data is created. Now what happens is, so two techniques are there. If it is interacting with the business requirements, then we call it as entity. If it is interacting with the data directly, then we call it as model. So we call as model. So that is the reason class is called as entity, class is called as model, class is called as blueprint. All definitions are correct. But every time it will not have same behavior depending on the situation. Depending on the situation, the behavior will be changing. That means a class is technically a template, but it can have the behavior of model, it can have the behavior of entity, or it can have the behavior of a template. So better always say class as a template. So how to define class? So let's see how to configure the class and define it. To define the class and work with the class in the object-oriented features, you need to know about one more point. And that is, before understanding about the class, you need to know about the concept called module. So module and class, important. The module is nothing but a module comprises of the logic. Module comprises of the logic which you can import and use in any project. In JavaScript, it's very important to understand this module system actually. So module is nothing but technically a module contains collection of classes. It contains collection of functions. So it contains collection of values. Everything is kept in a module. Actually, the JavaScript files are called as modules. We have to learn how to build a library. So JavaScript libraries are built with module systems. Actually, there are so many module systems. Like Common JS is a module system. AMD, Asynchronous Module Distribution. UMD, Universal Module Distribution. Require JS, like that. How this module system works, I will show you first. See, that there we have to design the classes and all. See, The real world projects, in the real world projects, how the libraries are built. I will show you an example. I will add a new folder here in the project by name library. Okay. In that library folder, I am adding a new file. I am adding a new file, a JavaScript file. So that means we are configuring a JavaScript file that is, so let's say some product.js, product.js. Okay. And this is the module which is product.js. Now remember, this is called module. That means this file is considered as module. In this module, you can have your functions and values. For example, I am creating a function. In the module, I am designing a function. So function is like hello. And this function is returning. So hello, welcome to JavaScript, something like this. This is a function. Now important, if you want to use this function in any location, if you want to use this function, generally what we have to do is, if it is present in a separate file, we need to use it. Directly it is not supported. Directly it is not supported. What you have to do is, we have to configure this, because anything you declare inside the JavaScript file, it is accessible only inside it. If you want to make it accessible outside, we have to use a word export. That means now this function can be accessed outside. Okay. Now, another point is how we can handle the data, how we can manage the data. Means I want to use this in our application. How to do that? So let's see. Generally, in order to use this in our application, what we have to do is go to HTML file. We can go to the HTML file and access that HTML content and use it. For that, if I want to import this and use anywhere, suppose I am using a HTML file in our JavaScript folder. In the JavaScript folder, I am creating a new file, demo, or suppose demo.html. So here, doc type HTML, head, title, modules. Now here I want to import that module and use it. Remember, in a module, you have currently a function and it is returning some presentation. And it is accessible only within this if it is not mentioned as export. Once you configure as export, it is accessible anywhere. Now, outside it also. Here, so many techniques are there, I will tell you. Generally, in order to import that and use it here, in the body section, suppose I am having some heading. Okay. I am writing a script here. This time, this script is having the type as module because we have to access the data from the module and use it. It's not general plain JavaScript. Now we have to import this function hello from product module. So from that product.js or any file it can be. So we can import that and we can use it. So how to do that? We have to use the word import and import from which file. What to import? You have to put a curly brace and from which file you want to import. So dot slash. In that we have library. In that we have some product.js. In that we have to import the function hello. We are using it. That's how we need to configure. After importing that hello function, we are importing hello from this library and document.query selector. So heading dot inner HTML. In that I want to display that hello result because hello is a function. We are importing that function from this particular library and we are accessing and using. And you see now when I run this page, HTML page, it should display that. So this is the module system. This is the module system. And very important is in a module, when you configure the function, you have to learn how to configure the function, how to import the function, and how to use it. You can have multiple functions. For example, suppose hello is having only this hello. So that means here it is having only hello. It will get only that. Suppose we have another one. That means you can have multiple functions. In order to use the functions, you need to know one more technique. There can be several functions. Suppose another export function and welcome. Welcome is another function. It returns, so welcome to OOP, like this. Now here I want to import that welcome also. Then I can just put a comma, welcome, from the same file. And I can access and print that welcome. We can use both of them. I'm accessing welcome function. It will get what is there in the welcome. Suppose I'm using here hello function and plus br and welcome function. And you can see both are working fine. Hello and welcome are working fine. So how to import, how to use the functions important. So first, how to export and how to import. One more point. While exporting, you can have any functions, any number of functions, but one function can be defined as a default. So that means if you mention any function as default, then hello is default. It's not accessible like this now. So you can see it's not working because if any function is any function or class is defined as default, it is defined as default. Then what we have to do is we have to import that and use it. So without parenthesis, that means curly brace. Now hello is accessed directly like this. So you have to access in a curly brace when it is defined without default. If it is defined with the default, then you can see how it's working. So if it is having default, that means it is the default function to export. And every module can have only one default. You cannot have both default. You cannot have both default. You cannot have both default. It will not work. Only one default can be there. One default can be there. And if it is configured as default, then it can be accessed directly. If it is not configured as default, so then you have to specify in a curly brace like this. That's how we need to specify. So technically, when you are dealing with real-time libraries, actually your libraries will be built like this. So you have to handle in this. For example, see, I will show you some more points here. Suppose I will show you one more time, step by step. First, we have to create a JavaScript file. In that, we need to define export default function and the function name product details. This product details function will take the ID, so or say name, price, and stock like this, and it will return the name. So that means the presentation name is equal to whatever name entered, and the price is equal to whatever the price entered. So price entered, and in the stock is equal to whatever the stock defined. It is returning this. Now we need to import and use this in our HTML page. To import and use in the HTML page, so we need to go to HTML. First, you have to define a script, and the script type you have to specify as module. It's mandatory. If the script type is not defined as module, it cannot work. You have to define as module. Now, inside this module, we need to import. Import no curly brace because it is default. So that means it is mentioned as default. So no curly brace used there. So that means you have to define product details from. So dot slash library. So slash. In that we have product dot JS file. That's how we need to configure. We are importing that and specifying it. Now we can access the product details and we can print anywhere. Suppose you have a paragraph. In the paragraph, I want to print. So document.query selector. So the paragraph inner HTML is equal to product details, whatever the product details we are accessing. And it should able to get the detail and display. In the details, it is expecting some parameters which we are not passing. So that means you see product details is expecting some parameters we have to pass. So that means we have to pass name and we have to pass the price and the stock, and automatically it will get the details and it will display those details. We are defining in this way. So here code is right. So it is accessing and displaying those details. This is a module system. In real-time projects, library is built in this way. You can import so many and you can use them. You can import and use so many. That means it's not like only one file. You can import any. For example, so in the file here we are having, in the library, there is another file. So that is category.js. In that we have export default function. So say get category. This should return, it should return the category name. Suppose whatever the category category name is there, you have to get that and display return. So that means here we are defining the product category, and we need to access that category name and define that. So that is the default configured. Now you see this is another file, get category. We have to import that also here. So that means we need to import and import and get category from library category.js, and we can access the get category and display here. So in the inner HTML, so we are defining in the next line. So here we say get categories and electronics like this, and it can access that and it can display the detail here. Category spelling category name category. Okay. We are importing that category and displaying that, and you can access that and show. This is multiple how we can access and define. So importing the library and using the library. This is what you will find everywhere in advanced. If you are learning other technologies which are JavaScript based, their libraries are built in this way. And we need to access and use them and handle them. So we have to know 2 points here. Why export and why default. Without default also you can manage. But default indicates that it is only one which automatically loads into memory. So which you can directly access and use it. Otherwise you need to configure in the curly brace and access that and load it. So generally when you are trying to access in various projects, this will be helpful. You can import this library anywhere and you can access those functions and use. There can be multiple functions or there can be a single function inside it. But at high level, directly we don't define functions. In a module, we design classes. Classes can be configured in 2 ways. We have class declaration. That means we have to define class name and its members. So you can also use class expression like where name is equal to class and whatever the members of class. It is like anonymous without any name. Generally, when you want to access a class inside the application and use inside the application and load only when it is required, in that case, we can go with class expression. Otherwise, we have to define class declaration. So we have in this class what you can have inside the class. In the class, you can have only property. The class, you can have only method. In the class, you can have only accessor and constructor. Only these four members are allowed. Constructor. Many times people ask questions to you like, can we have a function inside class? No. Can we have a variable inside class? No. Now the functions are managed as methods. The variables are managed as properties. Then immediately people ask question like, what is difference between variable and property? Variable is static. Actually, you can say not static. Variable is immutable. Its state cannot change. But property is mutable. It can change according to the situation. Similarly, functions cannot change, but method can change. In a template, you must have all methods which can be customized. If it is not allowing to customize, then it is not suitable in a class. So class can have only this. Data is stored in properties and functionality is defined in methods. For example, how to configure a class? Let's see. How do we configure and define the class? You see, I am creating a product.js. In that, we have to define a class. So class name product. And this class need to be marked as export and default if you want to directly access it. In this class, you cannot have a variable. It's not allowed. So it allows only property. The property where you can store some information, name. Suppose we have price, some number like this. We just define the data in properties and we access and use it. Here we are defining only property. And here we have like quantity and total. Total is a method. And this total must return. You don't need any function word. Even if you write, it is invalid. Only the function name. What it should return. So simply it should return this dot quantity into this dot price. It should return the functionality. Quantity into price. It should return it. So these are the members in a class. Later you will see what is difference between them. First, these are all the basic members in a class. Once the members are configured in the class, now we have to use this class in our application. Then script type is module, import, and we have product. So this is the class we have to import, product. product from the library dot slash library slash the library is product.js. Product.js. So that is the library to import. And you are importing the class now. And we want to use that class related members. So if you want to use the class related members, then you need to define them. How we can configure the class related members, how we can specify. In order to access the members of a class, you have to first create an object for the class. So that means some let obj is equal to new product. We are creating an object for the product class. Through that, this will allocate memory for the product class and it will load all its members. Now through it, we can access the product related details. Now we have obj dot name. So some name and so obj dot price. Obj dot price and price. Some price and quantity. So obj dot quantity. I given there qty only. Okay, qty is equal to 2. And I need to print total and all these details. Whatever details are there, I have to print them. So that printing related information also can be there here. That means we are creating a print catalog. In that print catalog, you can access print method is there. In that, we can access and print all the details. So it should return. So name is equal to this dot name and price is equal to this dot price. Okay, price and price, yeah. And another line, total quantity. Quantity is equal to this dot quantity. It is returning this data. Now we need to print the detail here. That means document dot write. So here we have to define or we have to print in the paragraph document dot query selector p dot inner html. We need to print the print method. That means is equal to obj dot print method. So this obj dot print method is actually empty. It is not having any details. And it is unable to handle those details. But we mentioned the details inside it. What problem you will face here is in the inspect, in the console, you see cannot load this library file slash missing. Okay. Initially, those are kept empty. After that, we are accessing them and loading and assigning some data. And you see now the details will be there. If you directly, without assigning, you directly can print. Without assigning, you can directly print. Then it will be empty. We can assign the values and we can use. We can reuse this. We can reuse this. For example, I'm saying product name, prompt, so enter name. So we are defining like price, prompt, enter price, enterprise. And we have like prompt, enter quantity. Like that. Now actually it will ask name, sub name, and we have price. So some price. And we have quantity. And those details it should get. Suppose I refresh it again. And the price and quantity. It should get the data and display the data. So whatever data is there, it will get and display it. You entered the details, it will access and display the details. This is basically configuring the class with some properties and methods. So these are the properties where we store the data. These are the methods that having certain functionality. And we have to print total also. Total we are not printing. So in the next line, suppose I am printing total. So total is equal to. So it should print this dot total. Total is a method which returns the total amount. So name, some mobile, so price, some price, and quantity, some quantity. So and I'm refreshing that again. Yeah, some Nike price, okay, quantity, and it should get the detail and display. You see, the total is undefined. So the total is undefined because this total is not returning the result. If total is not returning the result, it is just doing this functionality. If it is doing the functionality, you can call the functionality and give the result here. But we will just keep this to return total. Then it can get the total and print that and define it. I'm accessing the details here. You see name. So Nike casuals and price and some quantity. It will get the data and display. You know that you can round the details and display the details. You can round the detail and display the details. Math.round like functions, we can use them. So total, I don't want this lengthy fractions. This is a class configured with properties and methods. Now the question asked is, what is difference between the property and a variable? Because inside class you cannot declare a variable. Outside class you can have. So inside the class it is property. Advantage is, as I told you, property can be mutable. That means it can change according to the situation. But variables cannot. Always they have a stable functionality. They cannot change according to situation. So properties can change according to situation. How? How they can change according to the situation? Actually, properties can change according to the situation by using accessors. We can have accessors. Accessors allow to change. I will show you one example how the accessors, that means accessor advantage is at one situation it will allow, another situation it will not allow. Generally we call them as accessors. We have two accessors, getter and setter. Getter returns the value by using get. Setter sets the value by using set. These are used to control the behavior. How they can control the behavior. For example, suppose I declared a variable name. Generally, I want the name to be assigned with some value, but not for everybody. That means suppose we have a user with admin role. So user with admin role only can assign a value. If user is logging with another role, he cannot assign the value. That means we can put the restrictions. We can put the restrictions. And according to the restriction, we can control it. Variable can't do like that. So we can do that with the help of properties. In a property, for one person it will allow, for another person it will not allow. It can change its behavior. How? See that. So now in this product class, I am creating a property here. The property is nothing but generally product name. I will give the name underscore product name. That's the property. Underscore intention is to tell that it will be implemented later. That's what we are defining. And we will keep here. So username, one property. So and password, another property. Status message, another property. And product name. Now for this product name, we need to control dynamically. That means for one situation, it should allow. Another situation, it should not allow. That means now we can define an accessor for this. How? Get product name. Any name you can define product name. This is an accessor. That means now this is the accessor used for this returning this value. Get is used to return this dot underscore product name. That means get is used to read the value. It is used for reading the value. That's not required as of now. Okay. I will remove that in the page also. Clean that. Okay. So get is used for returning the value. Set is used for assigning the value. Is used for assigning the value. So we will use here setter product name. It is expecting new name, and this new name must be assigned based on username and password. Suppose I am giving the credentials like so. If this dot username is equal to John, okay, and this dot password is equal to some admin, then it should assign the name. That means this dot underscore product name is equal to new name. That new name must be assigned. Otherwise, it should display, else it should display a status message. This dot status message. So anything in the class is accessible by using the keyword. This same like object. In object also same technique we have used. I told you that object is called as pseudo class because it will have class like behavior. But these are all not allowed inside it. So now what should be the status message? So you are not authorized. authorized to set product name. That message should come. Okay. So this is the accessors. Accessors will give more control over property. Actually, properties are doing some work. We can make it work in a fine way, in a grained control. So you can prevent reading also. So you can write a condition for reading also. Like you can write that if password and username matching, then return. Otherwise, don't. That depends on your requirement. Now you can access, remember, product name. These are accessors for this particular property. One is to read the value, another to set the value. Now we will go into the HTML. You see here, importing, we will create an object as new product. And first we need to collect the username, passwords and all. So obj.username is equal to prompt. So enter username. That's the message. obj.password prompt. So enter password. Another one, we will define product name. obj.product name is equal to prompt. So enter product name. All these details. So, but remember, the product name will be assigned with the value you entered only when username, password are matching. Then we will put a condition here. If obj.product name, so if obj.product name is defined, if it is defined, then document.query selector. So we will access that P paragraph, inner HTML. Inside that we have to define. So name is equal to whatever the product name is. obj.product name we should display. Otherwise, we have to get the status message and display. Else, so else document.query selector paragraph inner HTML. We have to display obj.status message. Status message that should display. That means here the condition is it is asking username John. Password is something wrong. Product name is Nike Casuals. And username John. Password is wrong. And product name is some Nike Casuals. And you can see that it says you are not authorized to set product because password is wrong. Now again refresh. Username is John. Password is admin. Product name is Nike Casuals. Now it is available. If username is suppose David and password is admin, product name is Samsung TV, and it's not allowed because both should match as per the condition. That means as per the condition, it should match with the username and password. Then you can set. This is speciality of a property. That means at one situation, it is allowing to store value. In another situation, it is not allowing to store value. That we can manage by using. Generally, we can handle that by using accessors. So accessors are used for controlling and managing the properties dynamically. We can give more control over the properties by using these accessors. Getters and setters, we call them as accessors. Getter for reading the value, setter for setting the value. And we are using a simple technique. Here we are using the actual library technique, like import the library and access that and use it here. So this is the class, the properties, and the methods. Accessors, that means in a class we can have three things. You can have properties in a class, we can have methods in a class. Methods are like same functions. And we have accessors, which will have more control. And in a class, you can also have a constructor. So what is a constructor and what is the role of constructor? We need to know that. That we will see in our next session. Okay. Tomorrow we will do that. First you try this. I will upload the notes because module systems are a little bit confusion until or unless you practice that. So first you practice the modules, how they are configured and handled. Then tomorrow we can discuss constructors, inheritance and polymorphism, how they work. Because only those are supported in JavaScript. We have to learn those for OOP concept. Then we can go into event handling, how the event handling works. So few more concepts are there. With that we finish JavaScript. Then we can go into jQuery, SaaS like options, how to handle work and work with them. So tomorrow we will finish this OOP related concept. Okay.